The BSAA just deployed bioweapons wearing their own uniforms. Chris Redfield discovered his allies became the monsters he spent his entire career fighting. That post-credits scene in Village wasn't just a teaser, it revealed something absolutely horrifying about the organization trusted to protect humanity from bioterror threats. Those soldiers, bleeding green blood, weren't human anymore. Chris boards the evac chopper at the end of Village expecting backup, but instead finds mutant corpses in BSAA combat gear. He immediately orders Houndwolf to head straight for BSAA's European headquarters, promising someone's gonna pay. Then the story just skips ahead to Rose's future, leaving that entire confrontation completely off screen. The community theory makes crazy sense. After global agencies kept failing to contain outbreaks post-Resident Evil 6, someone inside BSAA decided traditional soldiers couldn't cut it anymore. They needed something stronger, something that could match the bioweapons they were fighting. The organization formed specifically to end bioterror just became bioterrorists themselves. Capcom deliberately kept this hanging. Village focused on the winner's family and the Mega My seed, so the BSAA twist worked as a stinger rather than the main plot. They wrapped up the winner's arc with Shadows of Rose, but intentionally never showed Chris's showdown with BSAA. Director Nakanishi mentioned the new game explores institutional trust and oversight. That lines up perfectly with Grace's FBI investigation, potentially uncovering that BSAA's bioweapon soldiers were manufactured through shell labs linked to Raccoon City's sealed remains and Blue Umbrella funding. A playable Chris route could show the assault on BSAA Europe headquarters, revealing an internal war between idealist agents and a corrupt board that quietly approved deploying B.O.Ws to stay competitive with the global black market. Blue Umbrella showed up claiming they wanted to help. They slapped a new coat of paint on the logo and told everyone the evil corporation was reformed. Chris technically works for them now in Resident Evil 7's Not a Hero DLC, but every file drips with suspicion. The official stuff describes them as a cleanup initiative under international agreement, but nobody reveals who's actually funding this operation. Lore communities notice the branding strategy is nearly identical to the original Umbrella Corporation. Same logo concept, same corporate structure, just a different color. The timing feels intentional. Umbrella left a power vacuum when it collapsed, and Blue Umbrella conveniently filled that exact space. Fans joke that if Umbrella was capitalism's evil side, Blue Umbrella is just the PR department covering up the same business model. We never see their board, investors, or deep motives across Resident Evil 7 and Village. They stay in the background as support, which lets Capcom hold them as this flexible, maybe reformed, maybe not type entity for a future twist. Requiem could flip this completely with Grace's FBA work, uncovering Blue Umbrella's internal logs showing dual ledgers. Above board, PMC contracts on one side, off-book research agreements with black market brokers, and the connections on the other. Blue Umbrella was created with government blessing as a controlled vessel to absorb and quietly reuse Umbrella-era data, but factions inside leveraged that access for private profit, feeding both BSAA's bioweapon programs and the global black market simultaneously. Leon walking through a pristine Umbrella research floor would hit different. Maybe then he finds archived servers labeled Project Restart containing viral research that proves nothing actually changed. The ghost never got rehabilitated, it just learned better camouflage. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want more Resident Evil deep dives, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You definitely won't want to miss what's coming next. The Connections created Evelyn in Resident Evil 7. This black market syndicate specializes in mutagenic bioweapons, operating as decentralized cells across Europe, Russia, and China. They employed Mia as an operative and handler, monitored Evelyn from afar, and manipulated Lucas Baker by giving him a serum that freed him from her control in exchange for research reports. Chris's Village files claim they found no proof of Connection involvement in that incident. Fans immediately called that suspicious. Too convenient, too clean. The thing is, Resident Evil 7 focused on the Bakers and Ethan, so the Connections functioned as this shadow contractor rather than the main villain. Village shifted to Miranda and the Mega My seat. The Connections' broader network and leadership never appear on screen. leaving a fully intact global biocrime infrastructure just floating over the new era. Spec Ops lore reveals they use dummy fronts to hide their operations. The organization likely formed from remnants of Tricell and Umbrella insiders who went private after those companies fell. They saw the bioweapon market didn't die with Umbrella. It just went underground and became way more profitable. Requiem's federal investigation angle gives perfect space for positioning the connections as the logistics backbone behind modern outbreaks. They're locked in with shell labs, manage shipping routes, and launder everything for both rogue states and corporate buyers. Grace's investigation could trace data recovered from the Wrenwood Hotel and Raccoon City directly back to the connections, linking them to historic Umbrella rival operations. That makes them the inheritors of the classic rival company lore. A DLC syndicate operation could show Leon or a DSO team hitting a connections hub city, showcasing their networks, encrypted shipping routes, and attempts to acquire living assets like Rose or Sherry for next generation weapon development. To me, Revelations 2 ended very vague and open-ended. Alex Wesker attempted to overwrite her consciousness into the child Natalia before dying. The epilogue heavily implies Alex's personality partially took root in Natalia's mind, leaving a Wesker consciousness transfer that might have actually worked. A living vessel walking into the main timeline with an embedded mastermind hiding in her head. The Revelation titles sit slightly off the main numbered storyline, and Capcom hasn't brought Natalia into a numbered game yet. Some developer comments suggested certain spin-off threads might remain unresolved, but fan discussion keeps the Natalia/Alex fusion alive as the top bring her back villain. Alex was obsessed with pushing evolution to the max, fitting perfectly with Requiem's rumored themes about legacy and rebirth. Requiem could introduce this subtly. Redacted CIA or BSAA reports about a European national with an anomalous psychological profile and unusual bioweapon resistance. A file Grace, Leon, or Chris reviews without fully breaking into Revelations 2 canon. Then, a DLC or even RE10 could elevate Natalia/Alex as the mastermind, coordinating the connections evolution into something more ideological, not just selling weapons, but steering humanity toward forced selection, echoing Albert Wesker's eugenic goals. Rose and Natalia become parallel cases, two children of consciousness transfer, Megamycete and Eveline versus Alex's imprint. They reflect different futures for the franchise's next generation of post-human characters. The Weskers always find a way back into the damn story. After Umbrella's collapse, their research flooded global black markets. Resident Evil 5 and Vendetta both mention private buyers expanding unchecked, setting up splinter labs in countries with weak oversight. The lore describes this international bioweapons economy, starting with Umbrella's late-era sales to syndicates, then Tricell's plagas and virus trafficking, and later operators like Glenn Arias salvaging Neo Umbrella and Tricell assets to mass-produce bioweapons for wealthy clients. Every single outbreak since Resident Evil 4 traces back to corporate greed and trafficking. This market thrived with rogue employees, rival companies, and intermediaries selling viruses, parasites, and custom creatures. The underlying economy operates completely unseen, evolving alongside the world's technology. Individual games show one auction or broker at a time, but never map out the whole system. Requiem could finally expose this as the meta-antagonist, not just another isolated incident, but the distributed network of corporations, private security firms, and logistics companies that treat bioweapons like products moving through ports and warehouses, AI gene editing tools, dark web auctions using cryptocurrency, PMC shipping routes that bypass international law. If the leaks about Leon's involvement hold true, his DSO/FBI crossover role could tackle high-level raids on auctions, front offices, and legitimate-looking labs that quietly repurpose confiscated samples. Grace traces the digital evidence trail, a set piece showing Leon infiltrating a bio-auction disguised as a NATO fundraiser would expose everything. Diplomats and defense contractors in suits, sipping champagne while bidding on viral samples. Umbrella was just the factory. The market was always the franchise, and business kept booming. Jessica Sharawat escaped revelations with a viral sample traced back to Tricell. The company went underground after Resident Evil 5, but was never actually destroyed. Facility cross-references in later games subtly mention Tricell methodology in viral gene splicing. Some developer Q&As hinted at legacy corporations surviving in the margins, operating through shell companies and third-party contracts, maintaining their research programs. Lore analysts I've seen on YouTube consider Jessica the most likely sleeper agent return. Her story was left deliberately open, and Requiem could tie this through a stolen archives subplot. Tricell's role would reframe corporate continuity across the series. The virus business never stopped trading. Companies just diversified their portfolios and learned to operate more carefully, staying hidden while maintaining profit streams. A set piece in an Antarctic relay station housing Tricell's last storage vault would work perfectly. Frozen viral containers preserved in cryo storage, decades of research kept on ice, and Jessica appearing as an intermediary broker, connecting old corporate research to new black market buyers. Raccoon City was destroyed in 1998 via missile strike to contain the T-virus outbreak, officially erasing Umbrella's worst crime and the physical evidence of the incident. The ruins were sealed, quarantined, and declared off-limits by law. For decades, Raccoon's remains existed as a background assumption in the lore, allowing Umbrella's successors to manipulate what was quietly recovered over time. Requiem brings the story physically back to those ruins, with marketing emphasizing the city's iconic skyline and its status as a literal city of the dead that was never properly revisited in mainline canon. The games hinted at data and samples being extracted over the years, but never showed the politics and profiteering around those operations. Raccoon's crater could become the physical nexus where everything intersects. Umbrella's original sins, BSAA's PR origin story, Blue Umbrella's corporate rebrand, and the black market all converging on one location. Grace's investigation discovers that multiple parties conducted salvage operations under the guise of cleanup work. Original Umbrella, rival companies, federal agencies, and later Blue Umbrella and Connections allied scavengers all picked through the remains. Leon walking through those burned streets would hit emotionally. The city is overgrown now, nature reclaiming the concrete, but security drones patrol the area, and neon-lit checkpoints suggest something valuable still exists down there. A horror-focused DLC campaign could let players explore sealed underground labs, flooded subway tunnels, and evidence vaults, uncovering lost virus variants and documents that implicate governments in selective recovery and systematic suppression of evidence. If the story brings us back to Raccoon City, it's because something there refuses to die. Rose is Ethan and Mia's daughter, born with mold-based powers due to her parents' exposure to the megamycete and Evelyn. Shadows of Rose showed her struggling with abilities in a megamycete-created mindscape. By the end, she gains greater control, rejects being defined as another Evelyn, and emotionally closes the Winters family arc. Developers indicated Rose's storyline and the Winters arc are finished after Shadows of Rose, suggesting she won't be the main focus of upcoming games, but her existence is still canon. A naturally conceived, stable post-human with powers comparable to and possibly exceeding Wesker's capabilities. That makes her a walking strategic asset that governments and corporations would kill to control or weaponize. Requiem could use her as background pressure, government and corporate files revealing ongoing classified debates about Rose's legal status. Is she a protected civilian, a research subject, or a potential deterrent weapon? A late-game intervention where Rose quietly assists Grace or Chris would keep her present without reopening the Winters storyline fully. Maybe she remotely neutralizes a mold-derived weapon, demonstrating she's the living cure and threat that terrifies both sides of the bioterror conflict. A future DLC or a sequel could force this to be something we can't ignore. A crisis in bioweapon escalation makes agencies consider weaponizing Rose's abilities to erase contaminated zones or hostile bioweapon consciousness, essentially turning her into the nuclear option that everyone fears, but nobody wants to actually deploy. Jake Muller and Sherry Birkin were last seen after Resident Evil 6, then just vanished from mainline canon. Both are immune carriers of key virus antibodies. Jake is Wesker's son, carrying his father's genetic legacy and unique blood that can develop cures against specific viruses. Sherry survived G-virus exposure as a child and later became a DSO agent to combat bioterror. After Resident Evil 6, neither appeared again, despite both being walking endpoints of Umbrella-era experimentation. One G-adapted survivor, one Wesker heir. The shift to the Winter's Arc and more localized horror left their global scope story completely hanging. Fans consider them the unmined gold of the post-outbreak world and repeatedly ask for their return as logical players in any narrative about the future of bioweaponry. Capcom intentionally shelved them during what seemed like a total reset for Resident Evil 7 and Village, but Requiem's timeline and systemic focus could bring them back seamlessly. As the story leans into examining institutions like BSAA, Blue Umbrella, and the black market, Sherry and Jake embody the human consequences of that technology. They're living assets whose DNA has been commodified, archived, and probably stolen for research. Sherry's role could be a senior DSO or interagency liaison who crosses paths with Grace. She feeds the FBI investigation data on historical operations and warns about cloning or theft of her own and Jake's genetic samples. Her federal alignment mirrors Leon's perfectly, making her re-entry feel natural through the investigative framework. Jake's role writes itself as a reluctant contractor who discovers his blood has been pirated and mass-produced without consent. He could front a DLC campaign, hitting clandestine labs, producing Jake-derived stabilizers for next-generation bioweapons. The emotional contrast is powerful. Children born from biodisasters, now adults, fighting against a new corporate virus economy built on exploiting their bodies. Reddit discussions talk about Jake working as a freelance biosoldier for hire in Europe's underground markets. A teaser moment could just be audio. Jake's voice saying, "Guess the family business never ends," or something cool like that, revealing he's been pulled back into the world he tried to escape. The series now has overlapping organizations with conflicting jurisdictions, creating institutional chaos. BSAA handles global bioterror response. DSO operates under direct presidential authority for tactical operations. The FBC existed before getting absorbed into other agencies. Blue Umbrella claims private sector cleanup contracts. Each organization competes instead of coordinating, especially between Chris's and Leon's chains of command. Resident Evil 6 first hinted these organizations secretly sabotage each other for funding, political positioning, and operational territory. Requiem's setup puts Leon in federal space, working some kind of DSO/FBI composite role, investigating systemic corruption. The narrative could show Leon receiving conflicting orders from different agencies, exposing institutional sabotage at the highest levels. A compromised BSAA leaking mission details to Blue Umbrella would explain how corporations always stay one step ahead of enforcement, how bioweapon outbreaks keep happening despite multiple agencies supposedly fighting them. Visual hooks could show redacted files intercut with agency logos glitching into one another, revealing hidden organizational connections and funding streams. Chris and Leon might discover they've been working against each other without knowing it, manipulated by agencies with competing agendas. Blue Umbrella's global database was teased in Resident Evil 7, supplements as heavily encrypted and institutionally unstable. Fan wikis and Capcom interviews emphasize how the franchise is shifting toward data-driven bioterror concepts. The virus doesn't need to exist in a physical vial anymore. It exists as information in encrypted files that can be transmitted instantly across the globe to anyone with the resources to manufacture it. The possibility of data itself becoming the new weapon fits modern horror perfectly. Leaked viral formulas spawning DIY bioweapon kits that anyone with access to gene editing equipment could manufacture in a basement lab. That aligns with cyber-bio-hybrid horror themes that feel genuinely insane in 2026. The Requiem title could symbolize a mass information leak. The Requiem for secrecy, where every buried project from Umbrella to the Connections gets exposed simultaneously. A set piece showing a hacker faction releasing something called Project Pandora would demonstrate the scope, reviving buried viruses from server backups and making them open source information available to the highest bidder or worst actor. The virus contained in a vial was manageable. The virus distributed through cloud servers spreads faster and farther than any outbreak Raccoon City ever experienced. Grace's FBI technical analyst background makes her perfectly positioned to trace this digital threat. Following the data trails through shell company servers, encrypted communication networks, and evidence of systematically erased records, the archives become the real weapon because whoever controls the information controls the future of bioterror itself. Across the entire timeline, the true enemy keeps evolving beyond the individual monsters. Manufacturers like Umbrella created the bioweapons, movers like the Connections distributed them globally. Enforcement agencies like BSAA failed to stop them or became them. Financiers like Tricell profited from every stage. Resident Evil 9 could reveal they're all subsidiaries or partners of an unseen multinational cartel that's been operating since the beginning. The conceptual pivot transforms creature horror into industrial horror. The monster isn't the tyrant anymore. It's the system that feeds it, funds it, designs its deployment, and ensures it keeps existing because multiple parties profit from the endless cycle. This unifies all the unresolved threads under one cosmology, corruption operating as the incurable virus spreading through every institution that was supposed to protect people. The potential boss villain wouldn't be some mutated bioweapon. It would be a CEO or board chair whose company funded both Umbrella's collapse and Blue Umbrella's rebirth. Someone who recognized bioterror as a permanent market sector, not a crisis to solve. A person who saw the profit potential in manufacturing both the disease and the cure. The payoff would show Requiem exposing the infrastructure instead of just fighting another infection. Grace's investigation, Leon's field operations, and Chris's confrontation with BSAA all converging to reveal this network.